We can start?
Yes.
Ja? Oké. Staan jullie er nog niet?
Jawel.
Jawel, ik ben er.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, everybody. Welcome to the first international webinar of the Sarnamihuis Foundation based in the Netherlands. My name is Sitla Bono. I'm one of the active volunteers of the Sarnamihuis. And this seminar would be opened by Mr. Amar Shuklal, the chairperson of the Sarnamihuis, but due to personal circumstances, he is not able to attend. Our program today will last for 2 hours. It consists on 2 presentations by Sander Hira on the work of the Sarnamihuis and how the Calcutta Letters Project is fitting into the work the Sarnamihuis is doing. After that, we'll have a presentation of Tanya Sitaram on the Calcutta Letters, and a second presentation by Sandu Hira, in which he analyzes the data of on indentureship labor he found in the Calcutta Letters Project. Sandu was, I will introduce him shortly for the people that don't know him yet. He studied economics at the Erasmus University here in Rotterdam and has written a lot of books on history. He is based in the Netherlands. So Sandu, please take the floor.
All right. Thank you very much, Sitla. Welcome everybody to the first webinar of Sarnamihuis. In my introduction, in this first introduction, I will position the Calcutta Letters project within all the work that Sarnamihuis is doing. So let me first explain the work of Sarnamihuis and give you an idea of how the Calcutta Letters fits in that work. Now, the Sarnamihuis Foundation is established in December 17, 2012 as an online community for the Indian identity in the Netherlands. And its goals are to study, preserve, propagate, and develop the history, language, and culture of the Surinamese Indian community, and to set up a physical and a virtual heritage institution for the history, language, and culture. We have 4 areas of work. One is the research of the history and publication of that research. We have a cooperation with Amri Publishers, which is a publishing house that has published about 80 books. And a lot of the books we publish is in cooperation with the Sarnamihuis. And so the publication part of our work is important. The second area is the promotion of arts. The third one is the education on history and identity. And the fourth one is activism. Now, our research work is based on the network of 3 historians, which are outside academia, Dr. Rajendra Bhagwanbali, Tanya Sitra, and myself. And we have relations with the people within the academia and are always open to engage with them in output-oriented projects. Now, Dr. Rajendra Bhagwanbali started his first publication before the founding of Sarnamihuis in 1969, which was a study as dissertation on how the system of indentured labor was organized in India, the recruitment process and the contract. Then in 2010, he published a study on the life on the plantations in Suriname. In 2011, he published a study on the 40 uprisings. There were 40 uprisings during colonialism, and One of the uprising was in 1884, led by Tittery. We'll come back to this legendary woman. And the title of his book, which discusses 5 of these uprising in details, is called Tittery. And he recently published another book with the term enkulit in English, like you have enslaved, where he gives a synthesis of all his work. The second historian we're working with from the Sarnamihuis is Taya Sitaram, who will be giving a presentation on the Calcutta letters. She's based in Suriname. She's now the director of the library of the Antonicum University in Suriname, and her master's thesis was based on archival work, and all the work of Bhagwan Bali is based on primary sources. So what we try to do at Sarnamihuis is get to the bottom, which is the primary sources. And then myself, I started in 1982 with a book on the history of resistance against colonialism in Suriname, on which one chapter dealt with indentured labor. In 1999, I published, together with Maurice Hassan Khan, the indentured labor database of Suriname based on the immigration register. In 2000, we published the records of the Japanese indentured labor and the Chinese one. These are the books which were published. In 2000, I published a book, Back to Uttar based on the work on the documentary and the interviews with people who are trying to visit their ancestors' villages in India. Then in 2003, I published the diary of Munshi Rahman Khan, which is an indentured labor who kept a diary in 5 volumes, which was published in 1 volume. And then the material that was collected by one indentured labor from Guyana who moved to Suriname, Chandrasekhar Sharma, and we got a material from his great-granddaughter, and obviously now we are preparing the book's collection of the Calcutta letters. Apart from the book, I've been developing the databases together with Maurice Hassan Khan, which have been published by the National Archives of the Netherlands, where the data from indentured laborers from India, Java, and China can be researched on internet. Then I've been involved with Yvette Forster, a director who, together with me and Vincent Sukra, who did one of the directories, we produced documentaries. The first documentary was based on the life of a man named Ramsahai, who came at 4-year age old from India with the last ship in 1916. And at the end of his life, I think it was well into the 90s, we went back with him to his supposed village in India through Varanasi, through Calcutta, Varanasi, and then to Kanpur, and his village was Vaina, and we documented that in a documentary. In 2003, we produced a documentary on the diary of Munshi Rahman Khan, and in 2013 we did a drama documentary on the uprising of 1884 by Johnny Tittery, and who was killed on the instigation of Barnett Lyon, who has a statue near the presidential palace in Suriname, and that statue became part of the activism of Sarnamihuis to replace that statue by a statue of Johnny Tittery. So the second pillar of the work of Sarnamihuis is the promotion of arts in its broad dimensions. Young Indian artists, singers, songwriters, stand-up comedians, we try to give them a platform, try to, when we organize events, try to promote their work and have them be part of the identity formation of the Indian community. And part of the educational work is the course we have developed on Sarnami. Sarnami is a language that is still spoken by the Indian community in Suriname and the Indian community in Holland, the Surinamese Indian community in Holland, and is based on Bhojpuri, but has its own characteristic. And we developed a course, and Amar Suklal, the chairman of Sarnamihuis, is giving this course. It's a Moodle-based course, where people learn the language. Then the young people involved in Sarnamihuis have developed this idea of the Indian History Month, like the Black History Month in the African community. And since 2015, every year in the month of June, a theme is taken, and last year's theme was an intergenerational thing of how Indian women in the early 80s of the last century were involved in feminism. And I'll show you a clip which was produced at that time.
It was the 80s. The women's movement was in a stride. Women's emancipation, sexual liberation, and international solidarity were talk of the town. Yet the faces occupying the spaces of these conversations were predominantly white. It was during these times many Surinamese women became politically active, including a collective of women who founded Ashanti, the feminist newspaper by and for Surinamese women, with the specific aim to represent, empower, and amplify the voices of women of color. It was a core group of Indo-Surinamese women who took the lead in shaping Ashanti. During a time in which many Surinamese organizations took on a Sranatongo name, the language commonly associated with the Black Surinamese community, the women behind Ashanti made a conscious decision to choose a Sarnami name, the specific language of the Indo-Surinamese community. Discontent, the meaning of Ashanti in Sarnami, was a call to action. By expressing their discontent about the position of women in society, they called on the women in their community to stand up and speak out. Hamsap Sarnami Auraton Jago. Indo-Surinamese woman, stand up and wake up. This call to action did not only challenge patriarchy, but addressed the many layers of oppression they as women of color faced. Sexism, racism, homophobia, and capitalism were systems of oppression they frequently critiqued in their publications. With a simple language to explain complex issues, Ashanti offered women a resource to get educated, get connected, and get inspired. From articles explaining the social construct of gender to interviews with women challenging those notions, Ashanti took on different means to engage women in questioning the status quo. Ashanti also offered room for their readers to share their thoughts and comments in sent-in letters, providing women of color center stage. But most importantly, Ashanti used the newspaper to organize and mobilize women in the movement. International Women's Days, training weekends, safe space gatherings, political orientation. The newspaper functioned as a means to invite women to step out of their comfort zone and into their community in service of emancipation and liberation. It is because of this work that linked information, education, and community empowerment that many Indo-Surinamese women achieved economic independence, allowing themselves to climb the social ladder and their children to enter colleges and universities. In that sense, the current generation of Indo-Surinamese people is able to thrive because of the work the previous generation has done to emancipate. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done, but we now know we don't have to look far to get inspired. We have so much experience and knowledge, one generation away. Ashanti, a legacy to celebrate.
All right. This is Yes. So this is the work that young people connected with Sarnamihuis are doing. The other important is the monthly newsletter of the Sarnamihuis, where columnists from different generations go into their experience in life, discuss both the life history of families in Suriname, as well as the current problems the Indo-Surinamese community experience in Holland. And then the last thing, the pillar of the work of Sarnamihuis is activism. And one of the projects which was very successful was in the wake of the Rhodes Must Fall movement, where historical statues were brought down. A campaign was organized to put up a statue for Tittery and replacing the statue of the colonizer Barnett Leon. And eventually the statue was replaced. In Amsterdam a street was named, and in Rotterdam a street was named after Tittery. And part of the campaign was the use of art and music to mobilize people. And this is a musical clip which was produced in Dutch, English, and Sarnami.
She was a leader, took a look around, knew they had to see her, that the people need her, no one to free her. She knew then, better step it up before they break her down. Her name was Tittery, Tittery, took a bullet to the head for us. They tried to wipe out history, history. We have never been told our hidden heroine is Tittery, Tittery. Now that we know you celebrate the life of Tittery, Tittery, Tittery.
Lieve hopeloze lotgenoten, doen jullie ogen open. Wat is de druppel die de emmer doet overlopen? Een lange weg te gaan, ze zetten deze stap op weg naar de vrijheid. Wat er niet van hun is afgepakt, vechten en verzetten zich met alle macht. Worden met harde hand gestraft en ongenadig afgevlacht. Ze gaf haar leven voor moslim en Hindustan, maar tot de dag van vandaag kende niemand haar naam. Haar naam was Tittery,
Tittery, took a bullet to the head for us. They tried to wipe out history, history. We have never been told our hidden heroine is Tittery, Tittery. Now that we know you celebrate the life of Tittery, Tittery, Tittery. बहुत सी दिल की आई थी चुपके अपना दी जन्नत की खोज में कड़ी धूप में खड़ी जब आजादी के लिए मौत की सजा
Yes, this clip was used as a instrument of mobilization.
Breaking news
Oh,
out of
sorry.
Sudan, where the
Let
military
me
has
let me
arrested
see.
several civilian ministers and officials.
Sorry, here we have to go back. Okay, apologies. Now, other projects we're involved in. Recently, in Suriname and in the Surinamese community in Holland, inter-ethnic tensions between people of African descent and Indian descent have been on the rise. And there is an initiative in which Sarnamihuis is involved to try to prevent escalation of ethnic tensions by setting up a system of dialogue, which will start on November the 7th, inter-ethnic dialogue. We have a few projects coming up the coming years. The first one is Diaspora Connect, in which we connect 5 databases through one application, which is the Calcutta Letters, the Census of 1921 and 1950 in Suriname, the Surinamese Immigration Registers, and the South African Ship Lists. And we will integrate that with historical geography with Google Maps, make it multilingual with Google Translate and DeepL Translate, and make it interactive with data from private archives from people, which enable them to construct their genealogical family trees and even make it available on their mobile phone. The second is an English translation of the book on Back to Uttar based on the new experiences of the last 20 years of people going back to India in search of their family roots. Then in cooperation with the Decolonial International Network, who's building a decolonial history app based on calendars, so what happened so many years ago on this date of today, we'll put up the Indian indentured labor dates in this decolonial history app. And we want to set up a virtual museum in which you could look into the object and go into more detail when you study objects, and hope to link it to physical museums when people can visit museums where they can see those objects. And finally, we want to reach out to an international audience with seminars maybe twice a year on different topics. We have a list of topics now here based on our works which we want to share, and also the works that our historians are doing. Anyone who wants to, or international partners who want to cooperate with us can email us at info@sarnamihuis.nl, and then we are more than happy to set up a working relations with anybody who would like to do that. Thank you very much, and I'll go back to Sitla.
Okay, thanks, Sandro, for enlightening the work of the Sarnamihuis. I will introduce you now to Tanya Sitaram. She is the co-author of the Calcutta letters that will be published next year. Tanya was recently connected to the National Archives in Suriname and is now director of the Library of the University of Suriname. Tanya, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Mrs. Sitla. Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much, Mrs. Sitla and Mr. Hira. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tanya Sitaram, and I'm from Suriname. I hope, Mr. Sarnamihuis, do you have the presentation,
Yes.
the PowerPoint?
Just a second.
Yes.
And let me share the screen so you could work from your presentation onwards.
I hope you all had a wonderful Diwali yesterday. And I'm happy that you are here to take note and interest in this new project named the Calcutta Papers. Yes. I will tell you more about this project, what has been done, what kind of material we have found and selected. And I will also show you some Calcutta papers so that you can get an impression, an example. When you look at the name, Calcutta Papers, one can think that there are only papers, documents, or letters from or to Calcutta. But no, there is more than just that. We have opted for the name Calcutta Papers because of several reasons, such as the head office or the main depot of the colonials from Suriname or the Netherlands was settled in Calcutta, because that was the port Suriname was using to send workers to the colony. Another reason is that even though the people were from different states, districts, or villages, they all departed from Calcutta and were hence called the Calcuttias in Suriname. Also, letters were collected in Calcutta to send to Suriname, and letters from Suriname were sent to Calcutta for further distribution. We need slide 2, Mr. Hira.
Yes, this is slide 2.
This is slide 3.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, this is it. Thank you. So, Calcutta Papers consists of letters, documents from government officials in Suriname and India, but also government officials in British Guiana, Trinidad, Grenada, and other countries where family members resided or traveled to. So in these kinds of letters, the officials wrote work-related information, but were also corresponding about and Hindustani people. The Calcutta Papers also consists of letters from Hindustani immigrants to their family members in India and letters from Hindustani families in India to families in Suriname. The official documents were from the Agent General, the AG in Suriname, Guyana, Trinidad, and other countries. The immigration agent and the protector of immigrants in India, Calcutta, the district commissioners in Suriname, other officials in Suriname and India, and individual Hindustani people. These letters have been found in the archive of the Agent General for the Immigration in Suriname, the Immigration Department, which has documents from the year 1853 to 1946. In this archive, there is not only correspondence and documents from or of the Hindustanis, but from all other ethnic groups such as the Chinese, the Japanese, Barbadians, Lebanese, immigrants from Madeira, Portuguese, etc. And his collection is approximately 77 meters long and has 1634 inventory numbers. But for this project, our focus is on the Hindustani immigrants or the Hindustani workers. I will show you some examples along the way. What are the topics of the letters? Money orders or money transfers, searching for loved ones or family members who went away without telling or in anger, random search in all countries because family members don't know where the other family member went to, asking about the new country and the good health or well-being, because of the fact that there were fewer women than men in Suriname. Men sometimes wrote back to their wives in India to come over to Suriname. Besides that, Hindustanis wrote to family to come and live in Suriname, probably because the situation was better here than in the home country. Family members were not always willing to come to Suriname because of several reasons. They don't want to leave their birthplace, for instance, or they fear the sea voyage, which can have a length of months, old age, if it were the parents. Other topics were families in India were missing the person in Suriname, so they wrote to come back to India. Letters to confirm something, letters about inheritances, asking for papers or documents, buying books. As we know, not all people who migrated from India were illiterate. Some were very intelligent, and they frequently bought books and write letters to printing presses or editors or bookstores to order a certain book or to ask whether there are new books on a topic. Let's look at some of the letters. Here are some of the money orders or the money transfers. Money was sent to family members in India. Money was sent to different kinds of family relations, such as money for mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, children, in-laws, editors, printing bookstores, to friends, to uncles, to nephews, to landlords. And the amounts, they differ from 10 guilders up to 400 guilders. And here you have some examples. And there was a form, a remittance form for these money transfers in which information had to be filled in by the sender. Her or his name, contract number, name of the ship the sender came with, plantation name, caste, name of the father, the relation with the recipient, and also full information of the recipient. The name of the recipient, caste, job, address, full address, the village, the zilla, thana, pirguna, gao, and also if this person, the recipient, cannot be found, what to do with the money. Send it back, give it to an alternative recipient. If so, then also the particulars of that alternative person. As you can see from one remittance, you can get so much information about the person and the family in India. This can be used for several other researches, and one of them is very famous, genealogy, family research. People go to India to find their ancestors, and the information from these money transfers can be of great value to their search, to give it more direction, where to find the person or under which name to ask for. Researchers can also use the information to check the economical situation of the Hindustanis in that time. How much time did it take to save the money, the amount of money to send to India, taking into account the low wages they were earning. In the next slide, we see what is the process of the money transfers. The immigrant brought the money to the district commissioner, to the agent general. The DC sends the money to the AG. AG asks the administrator of finance to convert the guilders to pound sterling or rupees. The administrator of finance makes a check for the immigration agent who exchanges the check in Calcutta at a bank. The immigration agent sends the money to the family via the administrative officials, the tehsildars, the magistrates, etc. If the village and the recipient had been found, the money was handed over to them and they signed a receipt which was later sent to Suriname as an acknowledgement. If the village was found, but not the recipient, then the sender had to decide whether to give the money to someone else or to send it back to Suriname. In most of the cases, the sender wanted their money back. In case the village cannot be found or the particulars, the address is incorrect or incomplete, the sender had to give the correct address and then the officials would try again to find the family. Here are some letters in which is mentioned, the first one, that the father of the sender died 10 years ago. A brother also died, but another brother is alive. This information is given to the sender so that he can decide what to do. Ask the money back or give it to his other brother. This letter made me think, so this person is sending money home, but maybe after being in the colony for 10 years, because he didn't even know that his father died a very long time ago. And maybe his family members didn't know where he migrated to or where he was or whether he was even alive or not. So they could not tell him either. This is so emotional that this person tried to make contact with the family after even 10 years. We do not know under which circumstances he came to Suriname. Did the family members know about his departure or not? Did he first thought that he will earn some money and send it home to help the family? But he couldn't do that earlier than now. But it took him 10 years. Was he poor? Under what conditions had he lived in Suriname? If the family didn't know he was in Suriname, weren't they longing to see him? And weren't they missing each other? So many questions and so many probable answers. But by doing more research, we can find some information. I don't know if there is a similar archive in India, maybe with these kinds of letters, so that we can find additional information. Still, a lot of research has to be done. The letter below The whereabouts of Nandlal, who is the brother of Birju, is not known. So Birju was searching for him. It could be an incorrect address, or maybe Nandlal went to another place or a colony in search of a job. In the other letter, the Deputy Commissioner of Gonda informs the immigration agent that there is no village named Dansora in Thana Hadailganj in district Gonda. The correct address has been asked. In such cases, it could be possible that maybe the borders of the villages had been changed, or the names had been written by the whites. So they were not familiar with the Hindustani names and the pronunciations, so they wrote what they heard. Let me show you some other letters. In this letter, the brother of Rambaros is searching for him and he wants to know about his well-being. This letter is from the wife of Guzarilal, Gomti, writing to him as well as to the government officials in Suriname, so that her husband can come back to India. She's in great trouble and her situation is not good. I want to read the letter to you, if you allow me to. Sir, I respectfully beg to state that my husband named Guzarilal, son of Babulal of Bhagun, district Mainpuri, was emigrated in 1914 with a 5 years contract. This period expired in June 1990. And this letter is from 1923. I have received the certificate from my husband, the copy of which is enclosed for perusal. Since his departure, I have been put to great troubles. I had to pass my days on hard labor, so there is no one who could help me. I'm in a most disastrous condition and am at present living with my old aged father, Mr. Kanhayalal, who is very infirm and has lost his eyesight. He cannot particularly keep me as he is himself in trouble. I humbly pray that your honor will take pity on me and call my husband here to India at the expense of government. He has been in islands for about 10 years. I'm a poor, helpless woman and cannot afford to pay any expenses. I hope my humble request will be graciously considered and I may be favored with a hopeful reply and my husband may be returned back early. And then the address has been given from the husband. Can you feel the helplessness of Gomti? She tried all the years, 10 years, but she cannot do it anymore. And there is no one else who can take care of her or her old father. So she's writing for help. And this letter, there is so much emotion in it. I know there was another letter. I don't have it here. In that letter, also a wife was writing to the husband to come back to India because their daughter was going to get married and they needed the father, the husband, and they didn't need only the money he was maybe bringing back home, but also him, the father, for the rituals. This was also one of the emotional letters for me because I know how important it is for a father, for a daughter, for a family to be there when the girl gets married. That letter, it was really emotional for me. This letter is an example of people who were not willing to come to Suriname. We have already discussed the possible reasons. The wife and the brother of Pultan were not willing to join him in Suriname. Further research on this letter gave us this information that Pultan came to Suriname when he was only 19 years old. That was in the year 1893. And when we look at the date of this letter, July 1921, then Pultan was already 28 years in Suriname. In the meanwhile, his wife was also 28 years alone in India, alone. And this letter was his second attempt to get his wife and brother to join him. First attempt was in February of the same year, but they refused. And in the database of the Hindustani immigrants, we found that Pautan didn't go back to India. He changed his name in Pautan Tiwari and he stayed in Suriname. And there is a big and known family in Suriname with this surname. And then on the next slide, we have Sahadev Bharti, the brother of Jagdev, who is now willing to go to Suriname to his brother. Further research showed that he didn't want to go earlier because of the rainy seasons at that time in India and because there was a case against him. So he was not able to go earlier. But now he was ready to go, and this letter is about his willingness. Here's an example of just informing if the family or want to know if the family members are alive, good, and living at the given address. Pyaralal Mahajan from Sudev Bazar, Dinapur, he writes a letter in 1882 to help him find his brother who went through Suriname in 1873. So it has been 10 years and they haven't heard of him or received any letter. He wanted to send letters to his brother and also receive his letters. That is why he had contacted the immigration agent in Calcutta. Can you imagine that? No contact and no information about your own brother, your loved ones, for 10 years. I couldn't do that. Like I already said, there are also letters from agent generals from other countries where Hindustani workers went. We have found a lot of letters from British Guyana, where the immigration agent general requests information about many Hindustanis who worked and lived in Guyana at that time, but they came from Suriname. In these letters, full particulars and descriptions are given. So more information. Also, there are letters from family members living in Guyana, Demerara, in writing to come over to Guyana because maybe the living standards were better there or they had a better position there. On the next slide, we see that the next slide, please. Yes. We also found letters written in Hindi and Urdu, and these are being translated at the moment. What was the procedure of sending letters from Suriname? You can buy envelopes at the DC, the district commissioner or the agent general. The envelopes were ordered in India and sent to Suriname. The sender sends letter to the DC sent it to the AG, and he sent it to India. And he could do that in two ways, via post office in Suriname and the post system in India to the village, or via the immigration agent in Calcutta who distributed them to the family in the village. What the family members also do or did is that they sent blank envelopes with stamps in their letters to India because that was cheaper for the family to reply back. There were different format of envelopes and values. We have found envelopes of 1 anna, 2.5 anna. This was the procedure sending letters from Suriname. Here we have the procedures of sending letters from India. Then you have the regular Indian post system to Suriname, from the village to the police station, the Thana to Suriname, the agent general or the post office. The post office in Suriname gets it, gives the letter to the agent general to the DC to the Hindustani worker. Methods is the regular Indian post system. Mr. Hira, just one. Regular Indian post system to Calcutta, that is the immigration agent direct to the agent general in Suriname. And here is an example of an envelope from India. Yes. Construction stories from the letters. How do we analyze the letters? We look at characters. Who is the person? Search more about her or him in the database, for example. Then we look at what the story is. What's the story about? Is it about people wanting to return to India or want family members in Suriname? Or is it about money transfers? Or is it about the different topics we have just talked about? And then the construction, the sources. We link the letters of the letter we have found with other letters. We search for more personal information in the database of the Hindustanis. So we know if a letter has been written, for example, in 1923, then we know from the database that the person came to Suriname in maybe 1893. We use other sources. Mr. Hira also showed some works of Mr. Gagan himself and my thesis. And then we put an imagination while analyzing that it could be this story for this person. Make an assumption. And in the last slide, I have mentioned where there can be more Calcutta papers. Letters of Hindustanis from India to their families are in the family archives. And letters from the family in Suriname who has sent letters to India is in the India family archives. So from these family archives or in these family archives, we can find more Calcutta letters, which can be very useful for research, and also in other official government archives in Suriname, India, and other countries. There can be other Calcutta papers. Personal, but useful. Okay, friends, that was my part in this presentation. I hope that you got an impression what this project is about and what kind of letters you can expect in the encyclopedia. Thank you for your attention and interest. And Mrs. Sitla, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Tanya, for your very interesting clarification of the letters that are found in the archives.
Thank you.
Yeah. We are going now to the last presentation of Sandeo on the analyzing the data that are found in the letters.
Right.
Sandeo, please.
Yes. Thank you, Sitla. I'll go into what the letters, what we can do with all the information which we are gathering now from the different databases which we are collecting. So Sarnamihuis is now collecting a huge repository of data of Indian indentured labor and the history of the Indian community. We have qualitative data, which are life histories that we promote. We have this book by Sabir and Hassan Mohammed, who collected life histories of older Indian women and brought their stories together in one volume of life histories. We have an upcoming book by Safikan Ghulam Haider, who goes into her own personal life history from Suriname. She's very old now, not very old, but she's old, and recollects her memories through her personal history. You get an idea of the history of the communities. And obviously, in the website of Sarnamihuis, we have the monthly newsletter where all these memory stories about the Indian community are being published. Then we have databases. So in the new database we are building, Diaspora Connect, We have the database of the immigration registers of the Indian indentured laborers. We have the database of the Calcutta letters. We have the census databases of 1921 and 1950, where mainly names and addresses are there, and in 1950 the marriage status. And we have the South African ship list with the villages where people came from, and we saw that from some around 800 villages, people went to Suriname and other went to South Africa. Now, the database of the immigration registers has fields, a contract number, which consists of a letter of the year of arrival and a number of registration at the immigration desk, the last name, the first name, the gender, the age at arrival, the registration number on the ship, whether they have departed or died at the end of their life, the family relations between people on the boat, did they come alone, did they come with family, the length in millimeters, the color of the skin, physical recognition marks, religion or caste, occupation in Suriname, which was mostly field or factory workers, country of birth, which was always India, the district, the police stations, and sometimes the Perguna as a tax district, the village, the place of departure, mostly Calcutta, the ship name, the date of departure, the date of arrival, the dates of contracts, start and end date of contract and recontracts, recruitment, mostly by colonial government, place of arrival, always Paramaribo, the planter who hired the worker, the plantation, the memo field, and whether there were children born in Suriname. And the memo field is very important because it contains a lot of information on birth, death, marriage, divorce, name changes, children, land ownership, buying, selling, departure to India, health situation. And I'll give you some ideas of how these memo fields look like. And here you have an idea. There could be short information, but there could also be huge, like here, a lot of information, which is now unstructured. So the challenge is, first of all, there are still errors, data input errors, which we have to correct, but transforming the memo fields into structured data for statistical analysis is one of the big challenges for the future. Then we have the South African immigration registers, which have the names, the age, the sex, the caste, the geographical origin in India, remarks, the arrivals, the employers, etc. And we can link the village of Suriname, the village of the immigrants in Suriname, with the village of the immigrants in South Africa. Then we are constructing now this database of the Calcutta letters, which has the basic fields are the date written, the sender, the receiver, the language, was it in English, Dutch, Hindi, Urdu, the type of writing, hand letters, what was handwritten or was it type, the keywords, topics and main topics, the persons mentioned and link it to the contract number and the immigration database. We have also a list of deaths, sometimes there were deaths. And obviously this is the most important thing, the money transfer, which Tanya just went into, where we have names, location and relationship of relatives in India. So for genealogical research, this is extremely important. Then if we have structured data, obviously we can do statistical analysis. We could do descriptive analysis, or we could do analytical analysis with relations between variables, and you can even go into mathematical modeling. So let me give you an example of some of the things we could do. For example, here we see a comparison of Suriname and South Africa with the average age of the people and the build-up of the age pyramid in Suriname and in South Africa. They're obviously very young people, 21 years of average age, and you see the majority was even below 24 who came, so very, very young people. The villages here, you could see that in South Africa there were some 66,961 villages mentioned. In Suriname, almost 70,000 villages. So there's an average number of persons of 2.2 2 in South Africa, 1.5 in Suriname, which means there obviously was no chain migration, and there was a large area for recruitment. And the castes, we have about 5,000 castes mentioned in South Africa and 1,700 in Suriname. So yes, this is some examples of descriptive analytical statistics we could do. We could even move further in terms of how to construct indexes based on modeling. One of the things we came across when we studied the letters was that there are intellectuals, people who were, you could see, who were not illiterate. They were intellectuals with intellectual needs. They ordered books. So we look into how the literacy was in the population of South Africa and Suriname, and used a technique called Whipple Index. It's a method of measuring the tendency of individuals to inaccurately report the actual age or date of birth. Respondents sometimes report the age or date of birth as a round number, usually ending in 0 or 5. And the process of reporting a rounded age is known as age heaping. So the index score is obtained by summing the number of persons in the age range between 23 and 62 who report ages ending in 0 and 5, dividing that sum by the total population between 23 and 62 years, inclusive, and multiplying the result by 5, and restating it as a percentage. The index scores range between 100, which means the population is very literate. We have no preference of ages ending in 0 and 5, or 500, all people are illiterate, reporting ages in 0 or 5. So we did a construction of the Whipple index here. You could see that it was based on about 10,000 for the female and the males in Suriname, and here about 65,000 females and males in South Africa. And the Whipple index for Suriname is 290 and South Africa 314, which means that they were more literate in Suriname than in South Africa. So if we go now to the topics of the letter, which Tanya has touched upon, then you can see that we have divided the topics into a main topic and subtopics, which this is, for example, the letters. And then if we look at the letters, we could have letters to family and friends, letters about prices of even the envelopes, letters about the whole enveloping things, letters about the payments. But for example, we have about contracts, about cultures, family relations, a lot of family things. Family in Suriname will not want to return to India, family in India asking for family in Suriname, divorce, just greetings to families, marriage, etc. So this gives you an idea of the kind of statistical analysis we can make. There's a huge, we plan in 2023 to come up with a statistical publication of all these statistics. And obviously we invite researchers across the world to think of, along with us, on what kind of statistical analysis can be made, and we will be more than happy to work with them. They could email us at info@sarnamihuis.nl. So that's basically where we are now with the letter. So back to you, Sitla.
Okay, thank you, Sandro, for your analyze on the figures of the letters. The floor is now open for discussion and questions. Please state your name and your affiliation, and we will see who can answer your question. Which of the presentators? Question 1.
Sitla,
Hmm?
my name is Om Prakash Gobardhan.
Okay.
I till when the papers, the Calcutta papers, the research, the time you are researching, is it between 1873 and till when you are researching that? I mean, till 1940 or?
I mean, the period till the letters.
That's the period. Yes, yes, yes.
Tanya, can you answer that?
The letters in the thank you for that question. The letters in the archives are from 1853 to 1946. So I think, I do not know which is the oldest letter we have from which year, but it cannot be older than 1946 because the collection is only till 1946. I do not know.
Okay.
No, I do not.
The reason I asked for it is because my Hamar Aja, my grandfather, he reached a letter from India that his father died. So that's the reason. And the letter, it was about 1940 something. He got that letter. So that's why, yeah. So about that time, yes.
Sorry, that was for 90?
I think 1940.
1940. No, but I
maybe yes.
What is maybe I did miss that to tell that the Calcutta papers which we have found are papers that are, or documents or letters who didn't reach to the person who wrote it or who had to get that letter. The letters who were, for example, the letter for your father was that it reached you. So that is not in the archive. So we will not even find it. The letters we found in the archives are letters which hasn't been delivered to the person or couldn't be delivered to the person because the person died or they couldn't find the person. So it stayed in the archive. Or maybe if in case of a money transfer, the money is not received in India, then they write a letter back to the government officials that we wrote a letter in 1893 that we were sending money to my father, but he didn't got it. Here is a copy of that letter. Then we get a copy of the letter which has been delivered. But undelivered letters are in the archives. Delivered letters are in your private archives, which is also of great value. So the years can be different, yes.
Okay, I understand. So letters that were delivered are not there in the archives because that went well. Only things that not went well, you will find back because there is correspondence about it.
Yes, yes.
Can we proceed to the next question?
I have a question.
Okay.
Yes, so I am Michael Jagisar. So I am a Guyanese, but through marriage I'm Dutch and I live in the UK. So I have twofold. Yeah, we move around. So I have a twofold question. So with the Suriname archive, is it the letters that are still there? Are they digitized, available digitally? So that's my first question. And my second is to compliment our colleagues for the wonderful work you're doing in the Sarnamihuis and for documenting all of this information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, for your comment. Tanya, can you say that, something about that?
Yes, the National Archive, Mrs. Sitla also said I was till recent part of the National Archive. They have digitized a lot of inventory numbers, but not yet all of them. And I do not know if they are going to put it online or going to build a database for it. I don't know, but they are digitized. Some numbers are being digitized.
I can comment on that.
Not yet all.
Yes. Sarnamihuis has just recently concluded informal agreement with the National Archives in Suriname to publish the letters in 2023 online, digital, but connected in this integrated database we call Diaspora Connect, where you find also the link with other databases like the immigration registers. So the letters then will be published not only as a photo scan, but also the annotation which we are putting in the encyclopedia, which will be then available online. And by the way, Michael, we have quite a lot of letters in correspondence with Guyana.
I know.
The interesting thing is there are emotional stories of families. For example, we have a few letters of a brother and a sister. A brother living in Guyana and trying to get a sister from Suriname to Guyana and sending money to get her there, and very lovesome letters where they take care of each other's and the way they talk about each other. And obviously there was a lot of people in Suriname who went to Guyana leaving the plantations as maroons. You know, they just fled the plantations and across the Nigeria River went to Guyana. And then there are letters where the government tried to figure out, you know, who is this person and where did he came from, and asking the Agent General in Suriname more information about it. But also letters between families who are informing each other. So yes, we're planning to do the Diaspora Connect database online in 2023 in cooperation with the
Yeah. Sitla, I forgot my other part of my question. Can I ask?
Okay, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, the other bit I'm curious about my surname. I don't think I have searched India. You can't find that surname, which means that it is a mispronunciation, misspelling. But what I have found is that this surname appears in Suriname, in Guyana, in Trinidad, in Grenada, in Martinique, and in St. Vincent. So I'm curious to see what's the link, whether it's a village name or whether it's the name of a family, but maybe it's not a question we can answer here.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Maybe Tanya, you could tell us about the name change in Suriname.
Yes. So in the beginning, there people only had one name, that is their first name. And later on in the 1930s, they had to choose for a surname. And what they did then, they took the name of their father, who is in India or in Suriname, made that their surname, and holds that they have a first name. So they have the first name and a surname that is actually the first name of their father. So yes, there is one case, or there are more, they could be more, that two brothers, for instance, Jagesar, the father's name was maybe Jagesar, but the elder brother, he took the name of the father as Jagesar for his surname, but the other one took his own name as for a surname and another first name. So they are family members, but with different names. And if you do not do good genealogy research, you would not even know that they are families. So Jagesar could be all around. They move where their situation was better, because that is what they constantly do. Look for places where this situation is better for them, and they travel around. So it could be that some of the family members went to Guyana, from Guyana to Trinidad, and all over the place.
Okay, thank you, Tanya, for your clarification. Michael, Jagesar is a very common name, I think, in the Caribbean. So I think it will be a lot of research to find out whether your family is is placed all over the Caribbean.
I have a question.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
This is Lamar Shupnarayan. May I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Lamar Shupnarayan. I'm from Guyana, but I'm stationed here in the United States. And I've been studying indenture for a long time, perhaps 3 decades. I've visited Suriname many times, but not necessarily the archives. My question is, were these letters written by indentured servants themselves, or were they written through an interpreter? And how can we determine that? And the second question is whether these letters are all written in English, Dutch, or in Hindi. Can you share some views on that? Whether they were written predominantly in English or in Hindi or any other language? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lomarsh. Tanya, will you answer this one? It was the question if the letters are written by the indentured laborers themselves, what the languages were.
The languages were in English predominantly, and we have some letters in Hindi and Urdu. One of the slides had one letter in Hindi and one in Urdu. And whether they wrote it by themselves, I don't think so, because if they, let me choose my correct words. There were different persons or places where they can go to write a letter. For example, if you are in Suriname and you want to send a letter to India, you could go to the immigration department, and a clerk or an interpreter can write this letter for you. And why I think that people in India also didn't write their letters by themselves, because of the improper English, I think. Then you have maybe a sentence, "We are missing you," for example, proper English. Then you have in the letters, "We missing you," or I don't know if they did that because they want to save place to put another sentence. I don't know, but I think somebody else was writing it. There were also writers in India. I've seen that in a film, that there was a man sitting under the tree, and if you wanted to write something, a letter, a wedding card, or what else, you can go to that person, give some money, and he will write it on a piece of paper for you. So I think they all went to such kind of people.
Yeah.
Can I weigh in?
Yes, I think you can.
Can I weigh on this? There are 2 categories of letters. When we talk about the Calcutta letters, we have 2 categories. One is the communication between families, where people write letters to each other as families. And the other one is the communication between authorities about families. So the authorities write about the families, and that's how we get the information about the families. And those letters, which are the bulk of the Calcutta letters, those letters are in English or in Dutch. In English, when they communicate with other agent general in the Caribbean, or with an immigration agent in Calcutta who doesn't speak Dutch, because there are immigration officials who spoke Dutch, and then the communication is in Dutch. So when the officials communicate about families, money transfer or otherwise, then that is the letters we have in the archives, because it's the archives of the agent general. Then there is the communication between families, and that communication is either in Urdu or in Hindi. And we get some of those letters because the family didn't reach the letter, but we know that there was a massive correspondence going on Why? Because we have detailed specifications of the envelopes that people were buying in Suriname to send to their families in India. And on the envelope, they wrote the return address. So they wrote in the envelope, look, I'm on the plantation in Suriname, this and this. So if you write me, this is the address you should write to. And those envelopes is where you could put a letter. And because of what we've seen from the research of Bhagwan Bali, that the people who came to Suriname were not all illiterate people, and based on what we've seen now in the Calcutta paper and this Whipple Index exercise that we did, that there were literate people writing letters to each others. And then you might have people who are illiterate and ask a school teacher, an official in India or in Suriname, people who were literate, they wrote down the letters in either Hindi or Urdu. So this is how the letters were written.
Okay, thank you, Sandhya. Lomarsh, I hope.
Can I follow up on that, please?
Yes.
Can I follow up on my question and the comments?
Yes.
You
Okay,
take 1 minute.
One more, please.
Yeah, the point I'm driving at here is to unearth the authenticity of these letters. I'm not saying they are not, but I'm concerned that how much of the content of these letters might have been misinterpreted or might have been watered down in its message between one connection to the other. And what I'm hearing is positive, don't get me wrong, that these letters tend to reflect more of the macro experience of the indenture system, which I have a lot of questions about in my research, especially when the information is coming from top down, in other words, coming from the institutions. I think the letters would be forward-looking if we can have the micro analysis of them, or the micro information, the letters that were written between the families. And what I'm hearing here, they were written in Hindi and perhaps Urdu, which it has been a problem for people like myself from Guyana, because as you know, we lost that language a long time ago, and I don't want to get into that. That will take us to another path. So my approach here, or my interpretation here, while these letters are forward-looking and encouraging, I also think they have to be interpreted or analyzed very carefully. Thank you.
No,
Thank you,
right on that.
Lomarsh.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that, Lomarsh. That the two sectors of the letters, when you have the communication between the authorities, obviously you look at the letter through the gaze of the authorities. You see, so then you have to have interpretations of what's going on and not take the information at face value. I agree on that.
Okay, thank you. I think we will finish this.
Just was one question from the chat. Somebody asked, Sunil Ramai asked in the chat, I received a couple of emails with photos of book Calcutta Briefen, where to be for the publicly insight in this book. So the books will be published in print in June next year, 10 volumes, about 5,000 pages will be published next year, where we have the scan, we have the transcription. If it's in English, we have the translation, or it's in another language, we try to get the translation in Dutch, if it's in English or another non-Dutch language. And then we have the annotation, which interprets the letter. And that's why, you know, we'll be around 10 volume of 500 page each. So that's about that question. Let me see if there are other questions before we.
No, I think Professor
I
Ajay
have one
has
question, please.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I don't have any particular questions, except that I want to congratulate your initiative in these directions. And I'm professor here in Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, in international studies. I'm a student of foreign affairs and had worked on diaspora 30 years ago as a researcher, a doctoral researcher on Mauritius. And now I edit a journal, Diaspora Studies, which is published by Routledge, but from 2021 January, it will move to Brill. But I have a very keen interest in older diaspora and the kind of work that you are doing. But my basic interest, and related to that, there is a smaller question, that the heritage of Indian diaspora in terms of memory, intangible heritage, in terms of their India Connect of the past, and also within India, issues like the cultural retention of diaspora formation and migrations, and same kind of memory through Videshia, and several such folklores and folk arts are now gradually disappearing from the mainstream, at least in India. The Indian diaspora policy, which I studied for my academic area, largely focused on connecting diaspora in the developed countries for various reasons, whether economic, for technology, for diplomacy, for strategy. But I also see the kind of work you are doing in terms of your memory connected with people back in India, with the diaspora in Suriname and Netherlands, is in your diaspora connect. That's my question. Is there some initiative to translate that emotional heritage into India Connect, or by connecting with diaspora in other countries?
Well, Sarnamihuis is keenly interested in developing relations with the diaspora on different levels, and with the project Diaspora Connect, this is one of the major aims of it. And interestingly enough, I remember talking to people who came from India, went to Suriname. Here on the radio, the music now they played with India was playing 50 years ago, right? So somehow it seems as if the Indian culture was frozen in the where it might be lost in India, it was still there in Suriname, in all faceted of life. So that's an interesting research topic, and Sarnamihuis would be keenly interested in developing relations with your university or others to go further into these kind of things.
Yes, I think that's a great initiative. We look forward to your India Connect or Global Diaspora Connect initiative based on these historical wealth that we have, the heritage that we have, how to translate that into connecting with people outside India and with India. And we look forward to that. And I'll be very happy to keep in touch with your initiative. Thank you once again, and congratulations for excellent initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rajai.
Please, may I ask a question?
Sorry, yes. Amita?
Yes, Amita. My name is Amita David, and I teach history here at Isabella Thoburn College, Lucknow, India. And my question is about the presentation which was made by Tanya about, and the question on adopting surnames. Is it possible that people took a name of, adopted the name of their village as a surname, which perhaps got, watered down into some other form?
Tanya?
Like Jageshar, like the name Jageshar, perhaps could mean there is a place in India called Jogeshwar. Could there be a connect?
It could be. I don't really know if they took names of villages. I don't know that. I know of the parents, mostly the father's name, but I haven't thought about this before. It could be.
No, It could be because it just came to my mind because we are working on diaspora, and there is a long list that we have of names and people wanting to know which clan, they belong to.
Yes.
So it just came to my mind because that name was, it got me thinking on the lines of cities. Maybe they didn't want to, forget their city or whatever, so, or their village. So maybe they had a name, in all probability, it could be their father, but there is a possibility that it could be the name of a city, which then, it gets anglicized and, the name changes.
But that's a good thing because we could
Yes.
check it actually in the database. We could check it by checking their names and the village they came
And
from.
yes, maybe through the letters or from which place,
No, but
there is a
in the
possibility.
immigration database, we also have the village they came from. So we have the name and the village they came from. So we could do the match.
Perhaps.
Okay,
Yeah.
good point. We will take this with us in
Thank you for that.
analyzing the names and related to possible villages. Thank you, Amita. Is there another question? You,
I have a
Robbie?
question. My name is Robbie Goverdan. I'm from Suriname. I'm in Spain now. I have a question. During my search from the father of my mother, my grandfather, I have encountered a problem. I understand, I guess Ms. Sitaram knows about it. Of the 63 registers in Suriname, there are only 44 available where you can search for the village, all the information. So the information regarding my grandfather, I could not find it in the registers because the parts were damaged, So what I'm doing now is I'm looking for information where I can find not the immigration records, but the immigration records of the immigration agent in Calcutta. Maybe does anybody know where I can find more information on the immigration records, the pass or the immigration passes of all the endangered laborers when they boarded the ship out of Calcutta?
Okay. Tanya, can you answer this one?
Yes, Mr. Goverdan, I also have that same problem. Even when I searched for my grand ancestors who came from India, that part in which that information was damaged. So what I did is search in the archive of the agent general if maybe that person sent money to India once, maybe, or was involved in a criminal case or something, then you have more information about that person. Not in a criminal case, or it could be something else as well. So I have tried that to get a little bit of information, but then somebody told me that maybe you can check the archives of England, because India was then a colony of England. And they must have had some registration that so many people are leaving the colony and this is their name and they came from here. I don't know for sure. I haven't checked that part, but I think that is a possibility. Mr. Hira, I don't know if
Yes, well, this problem of other information outside of Suriname has haunted us for decades now. I don't know if Professor Ajay has some information of Indian archives that could be relevant for people searching their ancestors in India. I wonder if you have additional information on that.
I think there are archives in Calcutta port, you can see, archives also Chennai port. And also it's very important to see that many of them migrated through Mauritius and other places. So you can check the archives. South African archives are also digitized. Mauritius archive is also digitized. There are good number of work by Mauritian scholar done on some of these archival records. So they are available. And of course, Calcutta and Madras archives, Chennai archives are very important in this regard. migration record individual wise is not there in Delhi, but on policies, programs, and other things you have in Delhi in a big number that covers that one. But I'm sure the Calcutta and Chennai record will be very useful.
I would like to elaborate on that, Professor. In 2019, my nephew Om Prakash, he's always participating in this Zoom meeting. We went to Calcutta to the archives over there, searching for the immigration records. But it's very difficult to get access to the archives because you need to have specific permission to have a look in the computer system. And they told us that the archives are not in Calcutta anymore, they're in Delhi. So I wrote a letter to the archives in Delhi and they told me that they should be in Calcutta. So what I would like to do is do some research on this to find the immigration records of all the indentured laborers before they left Calcutta to Suriname. I'm sure that there should be, the records are available somewhere in the room, but nobody knows about it. So that's why if anybody can help me finding the records, that would be really appreciated.
Yes. I think Government of India, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the divisions on diaspora had some initiative on this. So I think it will be good to approach them and seek their permission to consult the archive. For us also, we need a special permission to visit our national archives or some of these archives outside. So it's protected that way, but it's not difficult if you get the proper recommendations that you are a researcher and doing some research. So either some university or some authority recommends. And I think that's everywhere, even in Mauritius, when I was doing 30 years ago, I had to get the Mauritius Minister of Archive permission to consult the archive over there. Suriname, of course, is much easier to go. I was there with the conference was there 3 years ago. It's much easier to do that, but of course, open for researcher to do that. Yeah.
I suggest that.
Hold on, please. Robbie, I hope you can do with this information.
Well, what I'm trying to find out if with the help of a student, maybe Professor Jay can help me with that, if there is a student that would like to do some more research on this, so we can do it together. Because I've sent 2 times, I've sent messages to the Ministry of Diaspora as well in India. Up till now, I haven't received any reply from them, any answer from them. So I would like to do some research within India, because these records are very, very important, very valuable.
I think we can initiate the process if you have some major research work to be done, then I can start from the university side and you can then access through a project and they will allow access. But you need to put up a team from your side and we need to find someone from this side as well, yes.
Let's follow this up from Sarnamihuis.
That would be great. That was a following.
Then we'll take up your issues, Robbie, and connect with Professor Jai and see how we can move forward.
It sounds like a good plan.
Okay, nice. Lumars, you had another. Is there anyone else who want to pose a question? Okay, Lumars, go ahead if you like to. Can you unmute your video?
Yes, thank you. I know the Guyana National Archives has a lot of information there concerning the indentured laborers that left in 1838 and arrived in Guyana and stayed on until 1917. I'm not sure how much that can be helpful in the case of Suriname, but there were some connections during the period of indenture between Guyana, well, Dutch Guyana and British Guyana at that time. But I did some research at the India Record Office in London, And I came across a number of information that is discussed here. And maybe that's a place that perhaps can be explored. And also the Kew Gardens in London as well, where they have a lot of information there. I'm sure many of you here are very much aware of that, on the entire diasporic indentured experience. I know it might be costly, time consuming, but if you're in that area, sir, you may want to explore those avenues, as I have done in the past. Thank you.
Lomars, can you write down maybe the archives you mentioned? Because in speaking, I don't really hear the names of the archives you are referring to in London.
Well, in London, with the Indian Record Office in the British Library.
Okay, British Library.
And there's Kew Gardens in England.
Kew Gardens?
Yes, there's a huge archives there, really. And I think I did some research here 20 years ago, and in those days, you know, you get a hard copy coming to your desk. But today, I suspect that a lot of those information are digitized, but I have not gone in. I cannot confirm that. But given
when
how
were
things...
you there, Lomars?
Huh?
You were in London in these archives?
Yes.
And that was it?
About Kew Gardens, that's the name of the place where...
No, I mean, in which year did you visit the archives?
It was in 1999.
Okay.
I did it for my doctoral dissertation. And that book now, my dissertation was transformed into a book called Indo-Caribbean Migration, Indo-Caribbean Indenture Resistance and Accommodation, was published by the University of West Indies Press. Now, and I was able to gather a lot of information there, especially the India Record Office. It's in the British Library.
But you specifically looked for the Guyanese indentured laborers, or did you find something about Suriname also?
I did find a lot on Suriname as well, a lot on the Danish West Indies, as well as the British West Indies. My topic was very broad, was really resistance and accommodation. And as I was exploring, I didn't focus totally on Guyana, even though, you know, I was aware of the Guyana movement or indentured movement. But as I started to research more, I came across information concerning the, for example, the Danish West Indies, the British West Indies, and French West Indies, and Suriname.
Okay.
And they're all in English. They're all in English.
Good to hear. Thank you for the tips.
Yes.
Next question. Professor Ajay?
Yes, thank you. You know, we are celebrating 75th year of India's independence, and there is a lot of effort here to understand what role the diaspora, especially the old diaspora in the indentured diaspora, played in or supported or sympathized or sided with India's freedom struggles. That's a missing thing in terms of our history narratives. By any chance, any one of you have any such kind of narratives or history of people that you would like to share? We keep organizing webinar with ministry and ministers and others being present there to capture what has not been captured, that diaspora of India, especially the indentured diaspora, also sympathized, played some role in freedom struggle of India. So that's just I'm sharing. So any one of you are most welcome.
Sandro, I think I will put this question.
Yes.
At your table.
This is interesting because there are two ways in which it was connected and which we find evidence. One is the fact, the figure of Mahatma Gandhi in the Indian diaspora, you know, and how he was revered. For example, in the publication we brought out about Chandrasekhar Sharma, who was in Guyana, went to Suriname, and the amazing thing about is that the family, the grandchildren, great-grandchildren, are now dispersed about 8 different countries. And in the what the children, one of the great-granddaughter told is that how Mahatma Gandhi was, in his writings, was referred to as a symbolic figure, you see, in terms of how important Gandhi was associated with the liberation of India, and also in the case of Munshi Raman Khan, where the family was, saying that in the writings and the work of it, there was this interest. And obviously, we have in the Calcutta letters examples of publications that were ordered by the indentured laborers from following the politics of India and the subscriptions they had on the kind of periodicals. You see, we have some name of these periodicals they were following, but there were organizations formed after indentured labor in Suriname, of Indians in Suriname, and I'm not sure to what extent we have written declarations of support of the independence struggle. That is one research area that definitely would be interesting for us, because nobody looked at it from that perspective. So thank you for bringing it up, and I hope maybe some students can look into what these organizations, because we have a lot of periodical journals, clippings, of their activities. And the other way it was connected, obviously, is how indentured labor played a role in Indian nationalist politics, you see. And we have, for example, in the Calcutta letters, a case of one guy going to India to argue for immigrations to Suriname, but not in the form of indentured labor, in the form of free migration, you see, and tried to contact the nationalist movement in India for it. This is an area of study, it's very interesting, and we should get somebody going into it.
Okay,
I have a
thank you.
question concerning that, if you don't mind, please.
Sorry, Lamarche, you have a question on this?
Yes, a comment. I think the question is a good one, but in my research, the most appropriate question to be asked is why the Caribbean, the Indo-Caribbean, were not so active in supporting or participating the independence movement in India. I think the question can be reversed or be posed in an opposite way, because evidence seems to point that the people from the indentured descendants of the indentured Indians, even some indentured Indians as well, were not participatory in the independence movement from the Caribbean to India. One wonders why. Now, my contention is that at one point, India just abandoned these former indentured laborers and the descendants in the Caribbean. Actually, when the race riot occurred in British Guyana in the 1960s, India was nowhere to be found. In terms of the Indians there were locked in. They were not wanted in Guyana, and they were not wanted in India. They couldn't have gone to Suriname. Perhaps some did escape and over the Corentyne River and went to Suriname. So my question, and I think it's a very great discussion we're having here, why this was sort of absence, or at least on a symbolic level, from the Indo-Caribbean experience, not to participate as one would expect in the independence movement of India. When one considers especially the sort of nostalgia that the people of the Caribbean have maintained with India in terms of Bollywood and dance and food and so forth. Why was there this absence at a time when that absence shouldn't have happened? There should have been an eagerness. That's my comment.
That's a very interesting view and subject in which we haven't discussed before, the influence of independence of India on the indentured laborers in the Caribbean. Well, I think Sandor has said enough about it.
Just a minute to respond to him. There are several pieces that I have written exactly on this question, that why India had that policy at that point of time, which he pointed out, not just in Caribbean, but globally. What were the logics behind that, and what were the politics behind that, and also to make the point that Indian state came into existence only 1947. Before that, it was not India. And the role that diaspora had played in several countries, and we are getting participation from Southeast Asia in a very big number on that issue. I'm sure it will be in Caribbean and other places also, because Indian state and Nehru, the policy of distancing from diaspora started from 47. But the connect with India and several delegations that India had sent to find out the status, the conditions of Indians overseas is exactly opposite of that. So the state policy after 47 is a different issue, which is well-written one, and I have written quite a bit on this. But before that, the kind of emotional attachment that you are exhibiting to your research and which existed. I was in Suriname for the conference, and the hotel where I was staying, I talked to the person who is from Indonesia, and he said that they cried, his family cried when India got independence, because there was a lot of hope, and the Indians celebrated that. So there was a lot of emotional bond and association with what India was going to do in terms of independence.
Okay, I don't know if I can make this remark, but isn't it something about that the diaspora didn't have enough economic power to be involved in or to be interested for the Indian government to deal with?
Yeah. Yes, that's the usual charge. But if you look at this, the way the India is involved with diaspora, and especially with the old, not even 1% of that. But the connect with the old diaspora in terms of PIO card, in terms of several policy issues, is not now because of the money. Of course, for the new diaspora, which is 1 foot in India, 1 foot in US, which is digital and business diaspora, it is money, but not with the old diaspora. 1% of investment, 1% of remittance is not from the old diaspora, but 70% of the policy is towards the old diaspora now. It has also to do with the party that was in power in India, and there are a lot of dynamics, but I don't think we can cover it here.
Okay, thank you. I will close this subject now. Is there another question?
One question to Lomarsh. I have sent you a message, Lomarsh. I'm looking for information because I'm looking for information regarding my grandmother in Guyana. So if you could help me with that, that would be great.
Can you please unmute, Lomarsh?
Yes, sorry. Listen, if you can go on to just Google my name, Lomarsh Ryan, and it'll bring you up to my faculty webpage, and we can make contact through my email. Okay.
Good. Thank you.
It'll be easy to get me, and we can take it from there. I think
appreciate it.
Yeah, I think we should hold a sort of conference on this India independence movement and the Caribbean. I think there's a lot to be explored there, and that's a gray area, at least in my interpretation, in the diaspora. There has been not a clear understanding of the Indian role during the indenture and after. I know, for example, the Indian government, even though it was a British government, had a hands-off policy during the indenture period, even though at one time they were actively, the Indian government were actively participating between the colonial office, London, the Caribbean, and the British government. So there was a three-way interaction, and the Indian government was not excluded from that, even though it was a colonized government. And one can argue that the mere fact that the Indian Congress was pushing towards independence and eventually India were able to gain independence speaks to the strength of a colonized Indian government. So I don't buy into the fact that the Indian government was pretty much weak in the process of indentured labor overseas in terms of his relationship. Yes, they might have been handicapped by the most powerful imperial, the British system, but there were leeways which the Indian government could have used effectively into looking into the indenture system, especially in the areas of abuse. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Lomarge. There is room for one last question, and we are going to the end of this meeting. Is there anyone who wants to pose a last question? Okay, then I would like to thank the presenters and everybody who contributed to the discussion. Sano, will you please summarize what actions we can take on what is said today here?
Well, for Sarnamihuis, this is our first international webinar, and we are delighted to have this experience exposed from experts from other countries, and we would like to follow up on it. And I think the issue that Professor Ajay mentioned, we just never thought about it. So that is also a learning process for us, and I'm sure that we will be able to find students, you know, who take this up as an issue, and we will definitely encourage them to go into it, and obviously we'll consult other experts and see what this teaches us about identity, and so thank you very much. I don't know when we'll have a next meeting, but certainly on an individual level, we will connect to people who are participating here and see what we can do together. So thank you very much.
Okay, one last word for Tanya as one of the presenters. Can you unmute it?
Yes, thank you so much for your attention, for your interest, and I hope you will buy the encyclopedia.
Okay, thank you everybody for participating. Till next time.
All right.
Have a fine day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sita.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.